Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So once again, today we will be starting from chapter 16 of the Bhagavad Gita. Last time we completed chapter 15. And I will now share my slides. So this is actually, I guess some chapters are easier than other chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 16, which is also a short chapter and a very, you could say, straightforward chapter, as we will see. One thing, today I'm trying with headphones. Is the sound just as good as last time, or is it better than last time?
It's
Better than last.
It's better? Okay, that's good. Yes, no, it always helps to have headphones. Others agree it is just as good? Okay. So this chapter, who knows the title of this chapter? What is the title?
The divine demoniac.
Yes, divine and demoniac natures. So this chapter is, again, very simple because it's just a list. Essentially, there are two lists of divine qualities and demoniac qualities. And these are the qualities of those who are divine and those who are demoniac. But at the same time, these are qualities that exist in us. We all have a divine side and a demoniac side, and therefore, we are generally battling these two sides of our natures. We have two different natures. So the divine and demoniac natures are the two dogs, so to say, within our hearts that pull us in different directions. And here Krishna is discussing the divine and demoniac natures. Now, there's a connection between chapters 14, 15, and 16. These three chapters, in some ways, go together. And this is what the connection is. Who remembers, what did chapter 14 talk about? What was
Three modes of nature.
Yes, the three modes of material nature, right? The three modes of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So Krishna, first of all, establishes these are the modes of nature. These are the things that affect us, that pull us, and that draw us in different directions. And obviously, sattva draws us in the upward direction. Rajas and tamas, they draw us down in the demoniac directions. Then in chapter 15, it talks about the tree, the banyan tree, right? The great tree of this material world, and how this material world is an upside down tree. And it's described that the upper branches of this tree correspond to sattvagun, and the lower branches to rajas and tamas. Now, this is an interesting point that the tree, I'm just going to skip here. The tree that's described in chapter 15 is an upside down tree. So we had said that how in the actual tree, whatever is highest becomes the lowest in the material world. And that which is lowest in the spiritual world becomes the highest in the material world. So that which is lowest in the spiritual world becomes sattva gun in the material world, and that which is highest in the spiritual world becomes rajas and tamas in the material world. So how to understand this? Well, Krishna has his pastimes in Dwarka and he has his pastimes in Vrindavan. And his pastimes in Vrindavan are considered more confidential, and you could say from a absolute point of view, a little more higher, more intimate, more deeper than his pastimes in Dwarka. And so the themes, the feelings and the relationships expressed in Vrindavan, when they are mimicked in the material world, they become very demoniac or lower. But those expressed in Dwarka, they become part of what you would say an aristocratic society, kind of the upper rungs of society, the society that is very, very elegant and good and aristocratic. Why? Because in Dwarka, everyone is married and there's nice culture and there's nice, you could say, spiritual atmosphere. So what this means is that as far as the example that Krishna sets, and as far as a material, you could say, situation, we should follow the example set by the Lord and by his devotees in Dwarka, as far as setting up a civilization, more than Vrindavan. As just in terms of, here I mean in terms of like society and culture and all these things. Because the Vrindavan pastimes, they are for the very advanced devotees. And if we misunderstand them, it becomes sahaja. You see, like in Vrindavan, in other places, this is a big problem, are these sahajas. Sahaja means, when we think about sahaja, what do we think of? Someone can suggest, what is a sahaja? Who is a sahaja?
A person who's only dramatic without any spiritual realization.
Yes, very nice. So, yeah, go ahead.
Someone who thinks himself equal to Krishna.
Actually, the sages don't think themselves equal to Krishna, but who do they think themselves equal to?
The gopis?
Yes, the gopis, the residents of Vrindavan. So sahaja, generally when we think of a sahaja, it's someone who's dressed up as a gopi and they're having rasa lila. And yes, you're right, some sahajas dress up like Krishna. They don't think they're Krishna. That's Mayavad philosophy. They do think that they are servants of Krishna, but they're reenacting the rasa lila because they are interacting or imagining themselves in those relationships. So when we think of sahaja, we think of something very extreme like that. And obviously that's wrong. That's licentious, that's very fallen. Uh, Basically, these people are interested in illicit sex life, and therefore they do this wrong. However, in a more broader sense, sahaja means someone who takes something that is very divine, very elevated, and very difficult, and makes it very ordinary. So, sahaja is also someone, for example, who is practicing Krishna consciousness without giving proper due attention to the rules and regulations. So, I'm practicing Krishna consciousness, but I'm Krishna light, some people say, or I'm cool. I watch a movie, and once in a while uh, you know I drink coffee and these things like that. And these things are not so important because, but I'm chanting and I'm doing kirtan all the time. The spirit, the love is there in me. So this is a sahaja thing, that we're taking something that is very elevated, that is very pure, and we are making it something uh, ordinary. And that is displeasing to Krishna. Or, I'm reading the Rasa Leela section, but without hearing it through Srila Prabhupada's words. I just go to some Babaji and hear it. So I might not be dressed up as a gopi, but I'm taking instruction from unauthorized sources. I was just reading yesterday the pastimes of Raghunath Das Goswami, and it's described how he followed all the rules and regulations perfectly. There were, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that the rules and regulations in Raghunath Das Goswami's heart were like the lines etched in a stone. Lines etched in a stone never change. In the same way, the rules and regulations in his heart never changed. So, what happens is that if we try to mimic the higher branches of the spiritual world, we become like a sahaja, and it doesn't work. That civilization doesn't work. We must, for society as a whole, must try to imitate the residents of Dvarka, because there's varnashram there. There was some formality there. They're worshiping the Lord. They had nice relationships that were, all according to the scriptures. And then what happens if we mimic that? Then our existence becomes purified, and we come to the point where then one day we can access the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, and we can have those same moods and feelings. So a devotee is always aspiring for Vrindavan love, but in terms of society, I mean, they don't imitate Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. So now in chapter 16, therefore, once we understand this tree of material life and the different branches of this, then Krishna talks about the divine nature and the demoniac nature. The divine nature corresponding to the upper branches of the tree, and the demoniac nature to the lower branches. The demoniac nature corresponding to Rajas and Tamas, and the divine nature corresponds to Sattva Guna. Very scientific, very nice, very wonderful how these chapters sit together. So a chapter 16 overview is that in the first 6 verses, Krishna talks about the transcendental and demoniac qualities. Once again, he's back to the qualities. And actually, I'm looking for a volunteer. If someone would like to volunteer, it'll be a very nice meditation to do this. And I would request a volunteer who could present this in a future class, maybe next class, if possible, is if someone could go through the Gita and find all the places where Krishna talks about the qualities of a devotee or divine qualities. Because you might feel a deja vu feeling, as they say, that we just did this. Krishna just talked about the divine qualities because he does over and over and over and over again. So, how important these must be to Krishna, how important they must be for us. This whole chapter is dedicated to this. Just imagine. And so, if someone could go through and find out how many times Krishna does this and just compile these lists. So here we find the most comprehensive list. It's 26 qualities. of a divine person. And you find it also in chapter 12, chapter 10. I mean, just about chapter 9. Every single chapter, Krishna someplace or the other describes this. Arjuna asks, "What are the qualities of such a person?" In chapter 14 also, who's a person who's transcended the modes, and then Krishna describes all the qualities. So it's just a big theme. And if someone's interested in doing that, please let me know. So these are the transcendental. Yeah, go ahead. Someone.
I have such a list, Prabhuji. If you want, I can share it with you.
Oh, perfect. No, please. Next class, if you could please share it with all of us, Prabhu. If you could please share that list with us, that would be so nice.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. We'll plan it for next time. Yes. And then text 7 to 18 are the demoniac nature. The Krishna really in this chapter actually he gives a very comprehensive list of the divine, and then he gives a list of the demoniac nature as well. Oh, are you hearing an echo? Okay, there's a lot of echo. So is it the echo when the audience speaks or when I speak?
Audience speaks.
Oh, I see.
From the audience.
Okay. So should I remove the headset or should I keep it? What do you think?
Remove and try one.
Okay. How's it now? Now someone can try speaking. Did the
Yeah,
echo
this is better, Prabhuji. This
is
is
better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the demoniac nature, Krishna then expands on. He really gets into what is a demoniac nature, and then finally the results of demoniac activities. So this chapter is basically for our meditation. There's not much philosophy in this chapter. We have to really meditate on these qualities and try to develop these qualities. And in a later slide, Prabhupada, I will show how Prabhupada explains why. Why is it that Krishna is so keen on helping us gain these qualities? If the process of bhakti is complete and one can just perform devotional service to Krishna, why is it that Krishna is helping us develop these qualities? So let's start now. So you have in this first section, within this first section, you have the Sampadam Daivam. Okay. So Sampadam Daivam, qualities of the divine. Sampadam means qualities. Daivam means divine. And Sampadam Asrim, the qualities of the demoniac. So both of these qualities, Krishna just, in 4 verses, he just nails it. And then the rest of the chapter is expanding on it, explaining it. It's very important to understand those. But really, in the first 4 verses, we get the whole essence. So what are the divine qualities? Here they are. Fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of knowledge, charity, self-control, sacrifice, Vedic study, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, steady determination, vigor, modesty, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, freedom from the passion for honor. Imagine someone who has these 26 qualities. How wonderful that person must be. And imagine if we had these qualities, how happy we would be. So we can take these qualities and, make nice banners and put them in different places in our home, put maybe one each week on the door and remind us. These are the 26 qualities of a divine person. And there's a few of them that I would like to highlight because Srila Prabhupada highlights them in his purport. But first and foremost, it's important to understand that in the purport, Prabhupada particularly highlights different qualities of people in different ashramas. So we all know there's 4 ashramas, right? There's the brahmachari, the grahastha, the vanaprastha, and the sannyasi. And we all go through these stages. So regardless of which varna we are in, we are brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, shudra, or perhaps we're vaishnava and we're transcendental to this to these varnas, we still all go through the ashramas because we all age. And so according to the ashramas, Srila Prabhupada actually highlights which qualities we should develop, realizing that most of us may not be able to cultivate all of these simultaneously. Realizing our shortcomings, he particularly highlights certain ones based upon which stage in life we're in. And this is his kindness. He's helping us. This is where you start from. Of course, he wants us to develop all of these qualities. And we can develop all of these qualities. But until we come to the platform of being a sadhu, a saintly person, these are the qualities particularly for each ashram. So his purport is actually very interesting to this verse, that Prabhupada, after listing these things, he starts speaking about these are the stages of life and these are the ones that we should cultivate for each stage. But as I was mentioning, that we can cultivate all of these. We think, oh, it's impossible, but we can. We just have to try. We just have to mold our life in such a way. We have to mold our mind in such a way so that we can practice these. So the first one, it's very interesting. The first quality that Krishna mentions in this list is fearlessness. And in other lists that we saw, in a few other lists, Krishna, the first one that he mentions is which quality? Who remembers?
Humility?
Yes, humility and pridelessness. It's funny, in one list he says humility, in another list he says prideless. And so a person feels, well, this is the most important one. But in this list, he starts with fearlessness. And Prabhupada therefore takes a cue from this, that Krishna is therefore speaking to the renunciates, those who are in the highest order of life. And this is directly from Srila Prabhupada's purport. I'll read this. For a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness. Because a sannyasi has to be alone without any support or guarantee of support. He has simply to depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one thinks, after I leave my connections, who will protect me? He should not accept the renounced order of life. One must be fully convinced that Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect as Paramatma, is always within, that he is seeing everything, and he always knows what one intends to do. One must thus have firm conviction that Krishna, as Paramatma, will take care of a soul surrendered to him. I shall never be alone, one should think. Even if I live in the darkest regions of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. That conviction is called abhayam, fearlessness. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. So renunciation the renunciate or the fourth ashrama sannyas is characterized by the quality of fearlessness. One cannot have fear of death. One cannot have fear of anything because one is fully dependent on the Lord's mercy. And although this is a quality that is particularly highlighted for a sannyasi, um, this is a very important quality for all of us in every ashrama. Recently in the last 1 year or so, I was reading the news more than I normally do. I just started, somehow reading the news more often. And we've had very turbulent times, the previous president and then the pandemic and all these things. And I was reading the news more, and I didn't like that because it was a waste of time. I started to think, why is it that I read the news so much? And then I realized, why have I started? I don't really have an interest. I wasn't reading it before as much, but why have I started reading more? And then I realized it was due to fear. And by reading the news, I was thinking, I can get a handle on things. Okay, life will be less fearful. In the same way, the drive to earn a lot of money or to make all these arrangements, all these things, they are all driven by fear because we of the uncertainty of the future. But here Prabhupada is saying that if we just depend on Krishna, if we have that feeling of dependence within our heart, which is actually one of the 6 principles of surrender. Surrender means dependence upon Krishna. Otherwise, we truly aren't surrendered. If we depend upon Krishna, then we'll still, earn for our livelihood. We will still do what is necessary to protect ourselves and to take care of ourselves. But we will be abhayam. We will be fearless. But at the same time, then we will have time and space for the worship of the Lord. If we are fearful, then our mind will not have time and space to focus on the Lord. We'll always be too busy. And that busyness is due to our fearfulness of the material nature, making all these arrangements. So, again, I was just, reading in this pastime of Raghunath Das Goswami, that Raghunath Das Goswami, he was such a great, he came from such a great family. His parents, Govardhan Majumdar and Hiranya Majumdar, they were, by today's standards, they were billionaires, not just millionaires, but they were almost billionaires. Their income was something like 1.2 million gold coins. And each month or each year, I cannot remember, but each gold coin could buy 600 kilos of rice. So, there's no end to their wealth. Just like today's billionaires, there's no end to the wealth. In the same way, the family that Raghunath Das Goswami came from, there's no end to his wealth. And as a son of a wealthy man, he could support Lord Chaitanya's movement so nicely. If you have so much wealth, you can offer it for the service of Krishna. And his parents were loved by all the devotees, especially Advaitacharya and the intimate associates of the Lord. They loved him so much, them so much, because they were supporting the entire Sankirtan movement. They would pay for all the expenses of the devotees, all the festivals and anything that the devotees needed. Within a moment's time, his parents would pay for it. There's no shortage ever. They were like the bank of the whole society. Imagine if Elon Musk, he becomes a devotee, right? Or Jeff Bezos, the Amazon CEO, one of them becomes a devotee. Giving donations might become history in ISKCON, right? They would just support the whole movement. Any temple needs money, okay, he'll just write a check. Mayapur project, he'll write a check. Ambarish Prabhu is a little bit like that, but his wealth still has some limits. So he helps in the main projects. But imagine if you have someone like Bill Gates or someone like that, there would be no shortage. So that's the family that Raghunath Das Goswami came from. And to serve the Lord, to join Lord Chaitanya's movement, his Sankirtan movement, Raghunath Das Goswami, he leaves his family and he leaves his wealthy position and his wealthy place. I mean, he's never slept on the ground. He's always had the most amazing, all the facilities. And one day he escapes from his parents and he goes to the darkest regions of the forest, like Prabhupada here is saying, in the darkest regions of the forest to go and find Lord Chaitanya. Why? Because if he went through the towns, his parents would always drag him back. He'd always, they just drag him back. And he couldn't escape from home. So he goes to the forest fully dependent upon the Lord. And then when he reaches Lord Chaitanya, then he doesn't take a single penny with him. I mean, they have, you could say, mountains of gold coins. You say, okay, he would take at least 100 gold coins with him. He doesn't take a single penny with him, but rather he stands at the door of the temple, and every day, whatever is left, whatever is thrown out from the temple kitchen, he takes that and he eats that as his meal. So why does he do this? As the son of a rich man, one could argue that he could actually help the Sankirtan movement more than as a renunciate. But he does this because Krishna does not see what we give, but Krishna sees what we keep. Krishna is seeing what we are keeping for ourselves. Just like if a millionaire comes and he gives $100,000 and, a pauper comes and they have $10 and they give the full $10. The millionaire still keeps 10 million and he gives 1 million. The pauper comes, he has $10 and he gives 10. Then the person who gave 10 does a bigger sacrifice than the millionaire who gives 1 million. Why? Because Krishna doesn't see what we give, Krishna sees what we keep for ourselves, what we don't give to him. And that what we give, what we don't keep, that is a sign of fearlessness, meaning that we are fully depending on the protection of the Lord. So the sannyasi, the renunciates, renounces everything and lives like this so that there is a complete absorption in the remembrance of the Lord, in chanting and hearing about the Lord. And this is what Raghunath Das Goswami was doing. He was not keeping anything material, so that the only thing that he had was Krishna. And Krishna was his only source of protection. Krishna was the only person that he would depend upon. Krishna was everything for him. So, of course, we cannot imitate his example. We should not, after this, feel that I will just drop everything and go, because we might come crawling back. Prabhupada says that sometimes we can take sannyas immaturely and we leave home, but then the attachment is still there, so we come crawling back. So we cannot imitate him, but this is the example of fearlessness. Raghunath Das Goswami's example is best because it shows that he was completely fearless. He did not think twice, if I leave my bank balance, my parents, all these things, what will happen to me? But that spirit is what is needed for the sannyas order. And in contemporary times, many of our current saints did exactly this. I put this picture here because some of you may recognize these are, the person in the front is Indradumna Maharaj, next to him is Shivram Maharaj, and then I think maybe Giriraj Maharaj is there at the end. I'm not sure, but many of these devotees came from families of millionaires. Giriraj Maharaj, for example, his father was a millionaire and his father offered him $1 million if he left Srila Prabhupada and went back to his father. And one could think that, well, if they stayed a millionaire, they could have helped Prabhupada so much. Prabhupada needed money at that time to establish his movement. But no, that is very high. It is a very high platform to give one's wealth to Krishna. But even higher than that is to give one's life to Krishna. And that is the state of abhayam and renunciation, that when one gives one's life to Krishna, there's nothing higher that one can give. Just like when His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, when he took shelter of Srila Prabhupada and he took initiation, then he left everything, his whole family, his life. He came from a very aristocratic family, as you could see, in his nature. He was a very aristocratic person, very much like Raghunath Das Goswami. And when he met Srila Prabhupada, he left everything. And so he told Prabhupada after the initiation, I have nothing to give you. The other disciples were giving Prabhupada checks, they're wealthy or they're householders. And he said, Prabhupada, I have nothing to give you. And Prabhupada said, that's okay. You've given me your life. You haven't given me anything. You have just given me your life. And then Prabhupada smiled, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj could understand that in saying this, Srila Prabhupada had actually tricked him. Srila Prabhupada had actually taken his life, meaning he had accepted. Bhakti Maharaj was telling him that I cannot give you anything, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, no, that's okay. You have given me your life. So in that way, Prabhupada had as the Guru Dakshina, he had told him that your body is now mine. Your life is now mine. So this is the renunciate. This is the sannyas. Complete surrender to the Lord. Then the next stage is retired life. And when we retire, which is vanaprastha life, we think that now I've worked so hard throughout my life. Now is the time when I can relax. So this is the retired life. But Krishna's conception of retired life and Prabhupada's conception of retired life is very different. The quality that is highlighted in retired life is austerity. Can someone please read this for me? My screen on the top, it's actually hiding it. So can someone read this?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can I read?
Yes, please.
Okay. Tapas or austerity is especially meant for the retired life. One should not remain a householder throughout his whole life. He must always remember that there are 4 divisions of life: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanprastha, and Sannyas. So after Grihastha householder life, one should retire. If one lives for 100 years, he should spend 25 years in student life, 25 in householder life, 25 in retired life, and 25 in renounced order of life. These are the regulations of the Vedic religious discipline. A man retired from household life must practice austerities of the mind, body, and tongue. This is tapasya. The entire Varnashram society is meant for tapasya. Without tapasya or austerity, no human being can get liberation. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So retired life is actually meant for severe austerities, because this is the final time before the final exam. By the time of sannyas, the body is old enough where you cannot perform austerities. Or even during the time of retired life, one cannot. So before that time comes, and after householder life, once one's desires have been pacified or fulfilled, so to say. That's why householder life is very important. It's an important stage. We have desires, and unless we, sort of work them out, it's very difficult to overcome them. So by this stage, one has gone through those stages and has had a family and enjoyed, different types of, according to rules and regulations, but enjoyed basically some pleasures of material life, visiting places and sightseeing, this and that, whatever is part of household life, and seen it, done it, all those things. And now with a full focus, a person can perform great austerities for Krishna. So this is actually a very significant time of life. And austerities, one would think, are particularly meant for the student or for the householder or for the sannyasi. But Prabhupada here says for the retired life, austerity is prescribed. And what is the main austerity? The main austerity is to be completely absorbed. This is a time to be absorbed in hearing and chanting about the glories of the Lord. So in Kali Yuga, austerity does not mean, physical austerity as much as it does mean the discipline, that this time in life is meant for spiritual life. So this is a time of full dedication to the mission of the Lord. And then household life. For them, sacrifice is mentioned, particularly sacrifice. So here, one of the qualities here was sacrifice. Sacrifice, right? Right here, you see this. So sacrifices must be performed by the householder. The best sacrifice recommended in this age is called Sankirtan Yagya. This Sankirtan Yagya, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, is the best and most inexpensive sacrifice. Everyone can adopt it and derive benefit. So these three items, namely charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, are meant for the householder. So I just mentioned to you how Raghunath Das Goswami left everything to serve the Lord, and that was the ultimate sacrifice. That was the ultimate charity. That is the charity of one's own life, one's own body, everything to the Lord. But those people who stayed back, meaning his family members, they would donate very liberally to the devotees. So when we cannot sacrifice everything, we sacrifice something, and that is called charity. Charity can be in terms of wealth, but it can also be in terms of our skills. Just like, for example, I know some devotee lawyers, and a lawyer, they earn $300 an hour. Or I know a devotee CA, chartered accountant, and they earn maybe $150, $200 an hour. And so a lawyer could come and wash pots at the temple, and in this way serve the Lord. And that is very good. We should all do that, and that's very good. At the same time, the lawyer should not think that my service to the Lord is when I come to the temple and I clean the temple and wash the pots. But when I do my legal work, then I will, I charge. A lawyer can use his skills in law in the service of the devotees to, let's say, make the temple legally very nicely grounded. Do all the paperwork. You have to do all this, paperwork. Every temple has so many legal documents. A chartered accountant can become the treasurer of a temple. So these are also forms of charity and also forms of sacrifice, where we take our skills and we offer them to the Lord. An IT person in IT can make a website for the temple. So in this way, the householder purifies their existence, and by engaging their senses in the service of the Lord, their senses become controlled. So again, going back to our example of web design, when we use our senses in designing a website for the devotees or for the temple or for the Lord, then our senses become controlled, because those senses become engaged in the service of the Lord. So a householder need not leave his family, need not become a renunciate, but through charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, these particular three qualities should be cultivated by the householder. Then Svadhyaya, Vedic study, is meant for brahmachari or student life. Brahmacharis should have no connection with women. They should live a life of celibacy and engage the mind in the study of Vedic literature for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This is called Svadhyaya. So it's very interesting what Prabhupada here mentions, that the time to study the Vedic scriptures is brahmachari life, is student life. And this is more important than austerity. The first thing, because the mind is so inquisitive at that time, the first thing is that the children should be given spiritual subject matters to study. And this is what will lead to all the other qualities if they understand the scriptures, the teachings of the Lord. And this is something that may be lacking in our educational system in ISKCON, the systematic study of Shastra for children. And this is why many second generation devotees, they sometimes get distracted on the path because of this lack of Vedic study. It's most important. Prabhupada mentions it first. The second is there is austerity. For the student, brahmacharya, the practice of celibacy, is very important. Um, and why is this important? Because the mind cannot focus on study if celibacy is not practiced. And this is a fact. We see this, that in previous times, they all had, single gender schools. One school for the boys, one school for the girls. There's a separation, especially after they reach puberty. So like in this image, we see boys and girls sitting together and learning because they're small. It's before puberty. But after puberty, when the senses are very agitated, then the school or the classrooms were separate. Why is that? Because then that very active mind can focus and can be channeled in something beneficial rather than simply in trying to chase the sense objects, and in this way wasting those wonderful years. This is actually the downfall of modern education, is that, I mean, students actually don't study at all. Their only focus is the opposite sex. And because I teach at a university, I can tell you this. It's like there's no study there. It's just, study is just in between the main subject matter, which is the focus on the opposite sex. So real brilliance can actually be found and actually be developed in children when they have an environment where they can follow brahmacharya. And they can therefore engage the mind in the study of Vedic literature for the cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This is called svadhyaya. Then after this, Prabhupada himself says, very explicitly, he says that some qualities are for all ashramas. As far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in the Brahmachari ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, or Sannyas ashram, one should be very simple and straightforward. This is very, very important quality. And this will make our life so nice. Just very simple and straightforward. And Prabhupada likes this quality so much that he says it doesn't matter where you are, which varna or which ashram you are, always follow this principle of being very simple and straightforward. Prabhupada describes this as if even an enemy is asking you what the truth is, the mind is so simple and straightforward, you can tell the enemy the truth. I think in modern times, what this means is that even if an enemy gets into your phone, they won't find anything. Even if they read your text messages, they still won't find anything. And it's actually a very nice principle to follow, because if we are not simple and straightforward, then ultimately we say something where someone hears who uh, uh, someone hears who is not supposed to hear. And then we get immense anxiety, immense trouble, because we think, oh my God, what will happen now? And what will be the result of this? So one can speak so much in the mode of goodness that one can speak anything in front of anyone and not be in anxiety. This does not mean that we speak anything in front of anyone, but it means that even if someone hears or reads our email or reads our text messages, they won't find anything. They won't get anything that is not true or something that we would be embarrassed by. So we should be very simple and straightforward. And then this last one is actually my favorite. We have two here, but this one. Akrodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of the mode of passion and lust. So one who is transcendently situated should check himself from anger. So Prabhupada here is not saying that put yourself in places where there is no provocation. He's saying even there will always be provocation. There will always be reasons to be angry. Yet, if we are sorry, someone is unable to join somehow. Let me see here. So if we are in a situation that is provocating, we should still not be angry. Why is this? Because you might have noticed this yourself. This is a very interesting point here that he mentions. Once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. That actually the feeling, emotion of anger itself pollutes our own body when we get it. It actually affects us in such a way that it impurifies, it makes our body impure, it pollutes our body. And I was thinking about that this is why when the sages, when they would perform yagyas, they were not allowed to kill the demons who would come to destroy or disturb the sacrifices. They would bring the kshatriyas to protect the arena, but they themselves, even if the sacrifice was destroyed, would not kill the demons. Like Vishwamitra and Lord Ramachandra, right? That story. So why was that? I mean, why, they would even allow the sacrifice to be destroyed, but they would not destroy the demons. And that is because if they became angry, and to kill someone you need anger, to fight with someone you need anger, their body would become polluted, and the sacrifice would end anyway. They would be not qualified to then perform the mantras or perform those things. So anger therefore should be checked, because it actually just makes us impure, and therefore we can it does more harm to us than it does to the other person in many ways. Of course, Prabhupada mentions in many different places that anger should and can be used in the service of the Lord, like in the case of Lord Hanuman, or in the case of seeing another devotee being attacked or hurt, we should become very angry. So anger does have a place, and it can be used in the service of the Lord. But when it's used in our own service, then it pollutes our body. So we just have to leave this emotion of anger. And actually, yesterday I was feeling a little angry about something, and I read this and said, "Oh no, I should not be angry." And just by reading it, the problem was solved. That okay, this is not the mindset. This is not the way that a devotee responds. The way that I am responding is not the way that a devotee responds. Um, I should not be tit for tat. I should rise higher and be um, and let it go. Just let it go. So akrodha means to check anger, and we should meditate on this. Apaishanam means that one should not find fault with others. This is how we can check our anger. One should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. Of course, to call a thief is not fault finding. But to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive for one who is making advancement in spiritual life. This is very offensive. We should be very careful before we accuse a devotee for stealing money, or we accuse a devotee for doing something wrong, when that devotee has not done something wrong. When we make a statement, a general statement, when we accuse a devotee for, um, for something, if it is true, then that is okay. We must speak the truth. Even that, we have to see what our position is and what the devotee's position is, and how to say it, who to say it to. But definitely we should be very careful before we come to conclusions. That is the point here. And we should avoid finding fault. I was hearing, I think maybe I mentioned this last time, but I was hearing a class by Gaurang Prabhu, and he said that there's 6 different types of prajalpa. And of course, one of them is fault finding. And then another one is a type of prajalpa is engaging in conflict or argument. Because when we are in conflict or argument, when we're angry, then we are unable to focus the mind on Krishna at that time. Our mind is in that, whole issue. So therefore, we cannot focus our mind on Krishna at that time. And therefore, it's a form of prajalpa. Being angry takes up mental space. And because the anger is taking up that mental space, therefore we cannot fully absorb our mind in Krishna. Our mind has only so much space, and that takes away space from Krishna. So therefore, in terms of fault finding and conflict, the devotee does not care to deal with it so much, because the devotee saves the mental space to think about Krishna. Our mind will not be peaceful, or will be too agitated, will not be peaceful enough to think of Krishna always. So now these are the qualities of the divine person, these 26 qualities that we talked about. These are qualities that are inherent in the soul. But can these qualities be changed? Yes, by association. Through association, we can get demoniac qualities. And so now Krishna talks about the sampadam of the asuram, of the demons, the qualities of the demons. What are the qualities of the demons? And here he mentions our favorite quality first. So he doesn't, in terms of the divine qualities, he doesn't mention humility first. But in terms of the demons, he mentions pride first. So pride, again, Krishna is focused. He's not undermining that. He's saying pride, arrogance, and he mentions it twice in two different ways. Conceit, anger. Now, anger, freedom from anger is a divine quality. Anger is a demoniac quality. Harshness and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, Usana Pratha. So these are also very important qualities. And in terms of demoniac qualities, Krishna actually doesn't mention many. So therefore, we can really try to avoid these. There's only 4 or 5 that we need to avoid. Pride and arrogance, basically um, not thinking too much about of ourselves. It's said that oh, that's the next slide that will come, so I won't give it away. But Krishna actually gives the exact psychology of how and why we become proud. So we'll get to that. Conceit, anger, we talked about that, and then harshness. It's interesting that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya describes the qualities of a devotee, he mentions humility and meekness. So one might wonder, if he mentioned humility, then why is he saying meekness? Isn't it the same thing? It's not exactly. Meekness means freedom from harshness, gentleness. So one thing is to be proud, and one thing is to be humble, but another thing is to be gentle also. Sensitive to people's needs, sensitive in how we are dealing with others. The devotee is very sensitive. Not sensitive in terms of taking offense very easily, but just sensitive in terms of being very personal. And these qualities were very much exhibited by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada had this quality. He could understand where a person is and deal with them accordingly. Okay, this person is a very, this person likes excitement. So give him something very difficult to do and very big to do, and like some very active thing, and keep them happy in this way. This person is very quiet, kind of slow to move, gentle, of a different nature. So okay, give them some other work to do. You become an accountant or an editor or something like this. So the devotee harshness means when we are insensitive to who is around us, brash. The opposite of that is gentleness and sensitivity. And ignorance. So not trying to cultivate knowledge is a sign of a demon. Why should we be in ignorance? These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature. And in text 621, we will see how Krishna says lust, anger, and greed. These are also 3 qualities of a demon. And they are 3 gates to hell. Lust, anger, and greed, particularly Krishna says, are 3 gates to hell. So, who has these divine qualities and who has these demoniac qualities? Well, Krishna says that these qualities are developed at the same time. We also bring them with us from our past life. And so that's why some of us may have to work harder than others. I know that I have to work very hard on these qualities. Others, these qualities come naturally to them, the divine qualities, because they're born with them. Being born with them means what? they're bringing them from their past life. Our past samskaras affect what we are born with. The word abhijatasya, in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies, is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as Garbhodhan Sanskar. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles recommended for the social life of the human being. This is in the purport. These demoniac qualities are taken on by them from the beginning of their bodies, in the wombs of their mothers. As they grow, they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. So, in the purport to the divine qualities, Prabhupada says that these are the qualities that the devotee manifests from their birth because of Garbhodhan Sanskar, a godly child. And those who are demoniac, they manifest these qualities from the beginning. There's one person who was coming to the temple in Boise many years ago, and this lady, she was becoming a devotee, and she had 2 children, and one child was born as a result of her being raped. This is a true story. She told us that this child was born as a result of her being raped by this man. And this child, when she grew up, when she was like 13, 14, or maybe 15 years old, for no reason, she ran away from home. And she was always very kind of mean to her mother. When she was at home, she would give her a lot of difficulty. And then when she left, she just ran away at such a young age and never would call back or tell her mother where she's at. And her mother would worry about her day and night. And she noted that, that the child that was born as a result of the rape was very like this, very, very difficult. And the other child that she had was not like that, even though she gave equal affection, if not more affection, to both children equally, and even more to one of them who was giving her difficulty. So her conclusion was that the children bring something from their past life. And based upon the consciousness of the parents at the time of conception, a certain soul is attracted. So Garbhodhan Sanskar basically means that the consciousness of the child will be according to the consciousness of the parents. So therefore the parents do samskaras. They perform very special mantras and sacrifices to the Lord so that their consciousness is elevated. As a result, they will attract a godly child. And if we don't do that, then we may be lucky or we may be not, but the child that comes may not have those divine qualities. So that is one factor, that a person is born with certain qualities. But can those qualities change? Of course, we can completely change those qualities, and that child can become very godly. But the reason this helps is that then we know how uphill the battle is. So if we're trying to get to the top of the mountain and someone is born on the middle of the mountain, then it's only halfway up the mountain to reach the top. But if someone's born on the bottom of the mountain, it'll be more of an uphill battle. It's still possible. And in fact, the person born on the bottom may get ahead of the person born in the middle, but there still will be more of an uphill battle. And this is a fact we see even, we can give material examples that there's one girl who was born with some physical ailments in her legs, like she could not walk properly. And her mother was so determined that she would walk properly that this lady, it's a true story, that every single day she would massage the legs of her daughter and, run with her and like this, like she was just determined. And then that girl became an Olympic runner, and she, far exceeded any child that was born with normal limbs. So the point being that she was born with an inauspicious quality, so to say, an unfortunate position. But because of her determination and her mother's determination, she became the best runner, the best in her field. In the same way, one may be born with inauspicious qualities, but due to the association of devotees, one can become even better than those with auspicious qualities. But birth does make a difference, meaning that, I mean, uh, Krishna here is clearly telling Arjuna, he's saying, Ma shucha sampadam daivim abhijato si pandava. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with divine qualities. Right? So why does he tell Arjuna this? Because he says, look, you were born way on top of the mountain. For you to get negative qualities is actually going to be very, very difficult because you're born with these divine qualities. You are already very, very divine. You already came with a lot of pious credit. And therefore, Arjuna becomes afraid after hearing these negative qualities. What if I have them? He says, don't worry. You have the divine. Prabhupada in that purport explains that although Arjuna is fighting, he is not doing so because he is demoniac. His involvement in the fight was not demoniac because he was considering the pros and cons. The very fact that he was so hesitant to fight shows Arjuna's divine quality, not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. See, Prabhupada here, this is so beautiful. He specifically points out, clarifies that he did not have these three qualities of anger, false prestige, or harshness. So you might have heard this. This is the famous place in the Gita where Krishna says, in this world, there are two kinds of created beings. One is called divine and the other is demoniac. So what does this mean? Well, is there nothing in the middle? Yes, there is. But, we are born with certain tendencies. And again, the importance of Garvadhan Sanskar, the importance of trying to bring a child that is very godly. So they do not like people in divine nature. So who are the demoniac? Prabhupada now is explaining practically who are these demons, because the rest of the chapter is now expanding on the demoniac qualities. As I mentioned before, Krishna mentions the divine qualities, but then the rest of the chapter he talks about the demoniac qualities. So they do not like people in divine nature. They will tolerate all kinds of noise, barking of the dogs, the motor car passing, the aeroplane on overhead. But as soon as there is kirtan, they're disturbed. They'll tolerate so many different types of noise, but they'll not tolerate kirtan. Those of you who have gone on Harinam have this experience that when devotees are doing Harinam Sankirtan on the streets, some people will walk by and they're just like in bliss, like, they'll dance along and they'll smile and they'll think, oh wow, what a wonderful thing. They don't understand the spiritual significance, but they think, what great music, what a wonderful thing. These people are lightening up the street by doing this beautiful music with drums and kartals and flutes and sticks, and they just enjoy the Harinam like anything. And other people, when they walk by, they're like, they give you the most ugly scowl, and they're like, they sometimes will even put their fingers on their ears and walk by, or they'll look the other way, they'll cross the street and be as far as they can and walk by. Or sometimes they'll even, say something, shout something. So why the difference in response? Because one person has cultivated the divine quality, the other the demoniac quality. And Prabhupada is saying that actually the noise is not a problem. Their dogs bark in their homes all day. Whenever you go up to someone, pow, pow, pow inside. So the dog is barking. The traffic is there. All this noise is there. But kirtan is very disturbing. How is that? It's just like a similar metaphor, analogy can be given in India. Some parents, they'll let their sons and daughters do anything they want. They can go to the movies alone. They can go to the film. They can watch anything that they want. It's free, free pass. They can go to parties. But it's completely forbidden for them to go to the temple alone. No, you cannot go to the temple alone. If you go to the temple, you have to ask us, or they won't let them go to the temple. So the children can develop all the bad qualities. That's okay. But if they become like sadhus and very, very nice and very respectful to their parents and very devotional, and they get all the good qualities of the devotees, that is all intolerable. How dare they go to the temple? So this is the cultivation of demoniac qualities. Why they are not able to see the good fortune of their children in terms of spiritual life. It's interesting when Raghunath Das Goswami, when he comes to Lord Chaitanya, then Lord Chaitanya, he chastises, or he speaks negatively of Raghunath Das Goswami's parents, who are actually also great devotees. And they donate, as I mentioned, they donated a lot to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. But Lord Chaitanya says that they are actually like worms in stool. This is the exact words that he uses. He says they are worms in stool. They're attached to the stool of material life. And therefore, they're like worms in stool because they're attached to the stool of this whole material enjoyment and material prosperity. And one may ask, why is Lord Chaitanya speaking like this? And this is because they were trying to stop Raghunath Das Goswami from meeting Lord Chaitanya. So many of Lord Chaitanya's associates were wealthy and were householders. Shivananda Sen, for example. He would arrange for all of Lord Chaitanya's padayatras, everything. He was also a householder. So why Lord Chaitanya was particularly, very heavy on Raghunath Das Goswami's parents? It was because they were trying to stop him from becoming Lord Chaitanya's associate. And that Lord Chaitanya did not appreciate. So that's, like I said, all of us have some divine and demoniac quality in us. In the morning at 7 o'clock, we used to hold, this is Prabhupada continuing to speak, we used to hold our class, and there was little sound. Immediately the tenants from upwards, they would come down and complain. Sometimes they would call for police. And on the street, 2nd Avenue, there's always big trucks and motor cars going on, heavy sound. Then in your country, the garbage carrier sound. Prabhupada actually says this out. It's funny, in the tape, he makes the sound of the garbage truck. Carrier sound, the digging sound. So many sounds they'll tolerate. And as soon as Hare Krishna, oh, this is intolerable. This is demoniac. This is demoniac. So this is the demoniac mentality. This is what the demon means. So Krishna then goes on and he describes particularly what are the qualities of the demoniac person. So these are Krishna's words here that I have. Can someone else read this one? Someone would like to read? Oh, sorry.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I read?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Text 13 to 15. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future. More and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him. And my other enemies also will be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. This is called a dramatic reading. Thank you for your dramatic reading. It was very nice. Actually, it takes on a new flavor when we read like this. So, thank you. This is self-explanatory. Krishna is describing the agitated mind of a demoniac person. And see, there's always calculation because there's fear. The demoniac person is actually driven by fear and the devotee fearlessness. And this is why I brought that quote from Srila Prabhupada from his purport of fearlessness, because the mentality of the devotee is completely opposite, not calculating and depending on Krishna. So how did Prabhupada define fearlessness? He said, depending upon Krishna. So I don't have to worry about destroying my enemies or destroying those who are trying to destroy me. Krishna is the controller. He'll take care of those people who are trying to hurt me. I just have to serve Krishna. That is the realization of the devotee. If we're actually depending upon Krishna, Krishna will take care. We must earn our money legally. Earning money for Krishna should be done according to his laws, and we should be satisfied with whatever we get by honest labor. So one of the things that Krishna mentions is that they get their wealth by dishonest means. So it's very important that even if we are getting money for Krishna, we get it through honest means. And on this point, I have a question for all of you. This is a true story. This is a story of Mother Anuradha in England. She was a Sankirtan devotee. She's still a very amazing devotee, and at one point she was a Sankirtan devotee. Some of you may know her from UK, whoever is there from UK. And so one time she was distributing books, and she found $5,000 in the trash bin in front of a store. There's 5,000 pounds, no, not dollars. At that time, which is probably, I think, 20 years ago, 5,000 pounds, she found it in the trash bin in front of the store. And she found this money. It was at the end of the day. And she could immediately understand what happened. I mean, like, why would it be $5,000 in the trash bin in front of the store? She could understand that the cashier, the owner of the store, the cashier, whoever it was, when they left the store, they threw away something. And instead of throwing away what they intended, they accidentally threw away the pouch of money, the stack of money. So it was at the end of the day, and it was end of Sankirtan, and she could understand what happened. And she thought, wow, here's $5,000 at the end of the day of Sankirtan. And she takes those $5,000, and she's genuinely confused on what she should do. The store owner is not there. He's gone for the day. The money was there. So she goes back. And at that time, Giriraj Maharaj was sort of the leader of their team. And so she goes to Giriraj Swami and she says, Maharaj, what should I do with this money? It's 5,000 pounds. Should we, just, use it in Krishna's service? I won't keep it. This isn't my money. What should we do with this money? So she asks this question to Giriraj Swami, and then Maharaj responds, what do all of you think is the correct thing to do with that money? Anyone would like to suggest?
Prabhuji, use it in Krishna's service.
Okay, so your response would be that, okay, we should use it in Krishna's service. Very nice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I think it needs to be returned because it's not rightfully ours. And if the storekeeper says, "Oh, it's not mine," then maybe it's okay if nobody is claiming it. But the first step should be to return it.
Okay, the first step should be to return it. Now, they do serve meat in that store. I just want to tell you that store did serve meat. It was like a Tesco's. It was serving meat and alcohol.
We would agree that one should endeavor to try and find who's the real owner for it.
Okay, very nice.
I would say return it.
Okay.
Because we don't know the owner. Maybe we don't know the owner's situation. Maybe he needs the money. We don't know how he's making that money and what is what, and we do not have right to keep that.
Okay.
I think, Prabhuji, an honest attempt to find out, doesn't matter even if it's a sinner, a meat seller or an alcohol seller, just find out if he lost the money and is missing it. I think that would be appropriate. If you can't find the owner, then of course you can use it for Krishna's purposes, I would think.
Okay, so this is first we do that. Now, I mean,
Hare
the
Krishna Prabhuji, I
yes,
think you should take that money and give it to the police with a complaint stating that I found this money outside the store.
hmm.
Let them find the real owner and return it or hand it over to the administration.
Yes, but then the police would steal it. Then the police would keep it, right? But yes, I see your point. No, it's a good point. But I mean, just one question I have is that, but I mean, by taking that $5,000 and using it in Krishna's service, wouldn't we be giving that person good karma?
Yes, yes.
We would be giving him good karma.
I would
Or
think.
you are taking the bad karma. You don't know.
Yes, okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Krishna is the ultimate owner of everything, you know. So ultimately, the money belongs to Krishna. So I think if we use that money in proper service of Krishna, who is the ultimate owner, I think it's justifiable.
Okay. So
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
is our
Prabhuji.
father, so therefore, yeah, that's a good reason. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Um, Actually, it was by mistake someone put in the garbage, and Mataji got it. And if Mataji is using in the service of Krishna, so both ways in Agyat, sorry, like both ways, both person will be beneficial.
Hmm. Okay.
But also, Swami, also I have a question. I have just a comment there. Say if the clerk is working there and he's a poor man and maybe he's also a Krishna Bhakta, we don't know. And he accidentally threw the money and he's responsible to give it back to the owner for missing $5,000. I don't know how would you sort that out.
Okay. Yeah, he could go to jail because they thought he stole it,
right?
But he didn't. Okay. Yeah.
Prabhuji, I think so. First, we should find the person. I mean, we should go to the store and ask whether they have lost it or something like that. And if no clue of whose money they have lost it, then we should use it in Krishna's service and taking permission from Krishna that Krishna, I've tried my level best in finding this the owner of this money of this Lakshmi. So I'm not able to find it. So kindly please allow me to use in your service as everything is yours. Then I think so we can use it for Krishna's service.
Mm.
Truly,
I think,
Krishna.
Prabhuji, like when nothing in the world is like by chance, it's all because of it's all Krishna's plan. The blade of the grass don't move because it's just because of Krishna. So anything happen in our life, we have to think that um, okay, we got the money. Maybe it's Krishna's plan to use that person money to be used for his service, and because of that he will going to get good karma out of it. Like we say we came to the bhakti because someone must have blessed us before in our previous life. It's not our endeavor. If maybe it's because of that devotee who have blessed, so maybe that money which is going to the temple uh, will going to benefit him, and will bless him, and ultimately it's all Krishna's wish that the money come to us. But we definitely have to use 100% of that money for Krishna service.
Mm. I see. So you raise a good point, and so now here we are battling two things, right? All of us are answering two ways. The first is about being honest, right? That we all feel that Krishna wants us to be honest. This is one of the qualities of the divine person, and therefore we need to be honest. But then the second thing, which is the second principle of dharma, and oftentimes principles of dharma are in conflict, and we see it here, is the principle of, well, we also need to engage this person in Krishna's service. What is the use if we do our dharma and return it to him, and he takes this money and he gets drunk and he eats meat? So the second point is that we also need to engage this person somehow in Krishna's service. So how we need to resolve both things, and we need to do both things perfectly, but they both seem to be contradictory. If we use it in Krishna's service, we'll be dishonest, and what knows what happens. If we give it back to him, we might encourage him in sinful life, and we won't use it in Krishna's service. And so, very much like Arjuna, Giriraj Maharaj finds a way in which we can do both. And this is what his response was, which is a combination of all of your responses. He told Mother Anuradha, he said, tomorrow morning, wear very big tilak on your forehead. Very clear, nice big tilak. Make a nice, beautiful plate of prasadam. Go dressed as a devotee with pamphlets and books and a prasadam plate, and go back to the store first thing in the morning, as soon as it opens. Hand him the shopkeeper the $5,000 and say Hare Krishna, and here's your money. It was there, and here's also a plate of prasadam for you. And so he said, by doing this, what happens? We are honest. We're returning the money to the carekeeper, and we're helping this person progress spiritually. Because what will this person think? This person's life will be transformed. He'll think that, look at these devotees. They are actually people of God. I lost literally my livelihood here. Like you're saying, he could have gone to jail. Who knows what would have happened to him? And these people, they came back and they returned it. So devotees of Krishna must be the most godly people in the world, the best people in the world. And he'll want to find more about you, more about Krishna. He'll never forget the Hare Krishnas, and his spiritual life will begin. And the key point here is not the plate of prasadam. The key point here is the experience of faith and trust that would develop in this person's heart towards devotees, that could not be replaced in any other way, that could not be formed in any other way. And that agyata sukriti, that appreciation for the devotees, will go so much farther than if we use his $5,000 in Krishna service. That will also give him sukriti. But the sukriti, but like someone said, but we'll get bad karma then, we'll give him some pain or something wrong may happen. So the sukriti will actually be when we can inspire his heart, make his heart attached to Krishna. So the next day, this is what she did. She goes back and she gives the $5,000 to this person. She tells him all about Krishna and the devotees, and he asks himself, "Who are you?" And the devotees. And at the end, this person had tears in his eyes. Whether he became a devotee or not, I don't know. But he had tears in his eyes because he could understand that these were truly people of God. So this is an example that illustrates this point so much, that how a devotee always, under all ordinary circumstances, always acts in honest labor, acts for the service of the Lord, but through honesty, because that is a divine quality that pleases the Lord. Whereas the demons, they get their money through dishonest means. The devotee is ideal all round, in all ways, not just in his service to the Lord, but in all ways. Now, as a caveat to this, there are instances and ways and times in which a devotee may be dishonest for the Lord. For example, this is also a true story. When the devotees were in London in the very early days, they did not have any money, and they had rented a place. They're literally they were eating water and oats. This was their diet. They had no money from immense austerities. And then the end of the month came, and they did not have enough money to pay the rent. And the devotees were thinking, what will happen? Will the deities and devotees be on the street? This story is in Shyama Sundar Prabhu's book. And so one time they're walking down the street, and it's towards the end, and Shyama Sundar Prabhu recalls that in the air, they're walking down the street. From somewhere, $100 bills were flying down. And the devotees see these $100 pound bills, and they start running here and there, and they got them in the hand. And then they got this money, and that money paid for the rent for the devotees. So, this was an example where the owner was completely unknown. They had a shortcoming, and clearly Krishna was giving them something. Like literally, money was flying in the air. Krishna was giving them money to pay for the rent. Another example is that there was a shortage of food at the temple, and Prabhupada was there. And Prabhupada liked sweets with butter. And the devotees did not have money to buy butter. And Prabhupada was there. So across the street, Mother Malati, this is a story of Mother Malati, she noticed that every day the grocery truck comes and delivers goods to to the store. And so she noticed that when he delivers it, he leaves his truck open. So Srila Prabhupada wanted butter. I mean, he was from Bengal, he was serving Krishna, and Krishna likes butter. He had to be. So when the shopkeeper went in, Mother Malati would go to the truck and she would take out 2 or 3 bars of butter, put it in her bag, and come back into the temple. And then the following day or the same day, Prabhupada mentioned it too. He says, "Today the sweets are very nice. Where are you getting the butter from?" And Mother Malati describes to Prabhupada what she did. She said, "Prabhupada, what can we do? We have no money here. And I had to, I feel very embarrassed. I feel very bad, Prabhupada. I went and I stole these blocks of butter. And I still have this conflict in my mind. Prabhupada, was this okay?" And Prabhupada says, that is okay. Even Krishna is a butter thief. So you are for Krishna. So Krishna was a butter thief. So she says, just in terms of butter, it was okay. In the same way, devotees do this sometimes innocently with flowers also. There's no flowers for Krishna, so they'll go to a neighbor's yard and they'll cut a few flowers and offer them to Krishna. So these are sort of, you could say, these are harmless, innocent ways of, you could say, ways in which devotees sometimes make things work for the service of Krishna. But devotees are always, you could say, sworn to honesty. And under all circumstances, they endeavor to this. And there's so many stories in our Shastras, like the story of the cow and the tiger, where Krishna shows how pleased he is with the devotees when they practice this principle. Especially if we make promises to devotees and to Krishna, we should always fulfill them. So they are sworn to unclean work. They eat unclean things. This is the quality of the demons, as is shown in this image here. So the difference is in terms of shelter. And in text 10, Krishna describes that what is the shelter of the demons? The shelter of the demons is kamam. The shelter of the demons is lust. Kamam ashrita. They put their faith and shelter into lust. And it's interesting, in chapter 18, Krishna says, ahankara ashritya, that the devotees, they put their faith and trust, the demons, in kama, in lust, and in ahankara, in false ego. Ashrita, again, means false ego. So they put their shelter in false ego. Whereas the devotees, do they put their shelter in? In the divine energy, daivim prakritim ashrita. They put their shelter in the divine energy of the Lord. Divine energy, yes. Before I forget, I just wanted to say something completely out of context, but just everyone, please, if you can, try to join on time. I noticed that in the beginning, there were about 35 people. Now there's 53 people. So if possible, please try to join on time, because in the beginning, we sort of lay the groundwork of the chapter. So some of you are very timely. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining on time. And others, I know it's not possible all the time, but try to join on time so you can get the whole thing. So Daivim Prakritim Ashrita, that they take shelter of the divine energy, Krishna's divine energy. They don't take shelter in lust, anger, and greed, but rather in humility, forgiveness, kindness, devotion to the Lord. These things are their shelter. Tolerance is their shelter rather than anger. So here Krishna says, those who are envious and mischievous, who are lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So the result, now the final section we're talking about, the result of these demoniac qualities is that Krishna punishes us for having them. It's not just that, oh, we have it, so what can we do? It is our fault that we have these qualities. We made the choices to come to this point. And so Krishna is saying here that what is the result of this? He says, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demonic species, those who are envious and mischievous, those who are uh, acting in this way. And there's so many commentaries on this word perpetual. I just want to spend a moment on this. Krishna saying, I perpetually cast. What does this mean? Does Krishna send us to eternal hell? Is this an idea of eternal hell? No. What this means is, and Prabhupada is crystal clear, is that Krishna is saying again and again. Perpetual means again and again. It's just like I was giving you the example, I think last time, in terms of language, we do this, where we tell someone, oh, you are always lazy, or you are always sleeping. Now, this doesn't mean that that person is actually always sleeping. But when a person sleeps too much, then we say, oh, you're always sleeping. So in the same way, Krishna here is saying it as a way of focus, as a way of emphasis, that again and again, for a very long period of time, these people are stuck in material existence. So whatever it is, therefore, like Radha Govinda Maharaj, he says, we should be afraid of performing sinful activities. Whatever it is, we should give up sinful life. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this, that he has a beautiful song where he says, whatever you do or you don't do, just give up sinful life. Run away from these things. Don't think about going to the McDonald's. Don't think about going to the movie theaters. Don't think about going to the bars and these gross forms of sense enjoyment, because the reaction is very heavy. Give up those things. You want to worship Krishna, 4 in the morning or 6 in the morning, whatever it is, it's okay, but give up sinful life. That is very difficult. Why? Because we lose the opportunity then to progress in our spiritual life. It becomes very delayed. We lose lifetimes and lifetimes of time because we end up in these species. And then we have to work our way back up to the human species. So in our philosophy, we have the idea of karma. But karma is not a free pass. So if we misuse this life, we will go down to, let's say, an alligator species. Last time I was giving the example how too much sunbathing can lead to the alligator species. Sense enjoyment, sunbathing, material life. Then once we go to that species, it's not that, okay, well, next life I became an alligator, okay, sat in the sun a bit more, and then the next life I'll become a human being. No, it doesn't work like that. We become an alligator, and then we have to go through all the millions of species of life from the alligator back to the human species. Wherever that species is, wherever in the chain it is, we go there and then we work our way back up. So misusing the human form of life can delay us by 4 or 5 million lifetimes. So there are consequences to our decisions. This idea of eternal hell was actually invented in Christianity as a way to make people afraid that, okay, if you do the wrong thing, you'll go to hell for eternity. It was actually invented by them. So people oftentimes then criticize that in Vedic things, it's too easy. There's no real, result for bad things that we do. But actually, it's a kind of a middle ground, because it's not too easy. It does take, it's not like you just suffer one lifetime. It does take a very long time, but it's not eternity. So it's in the middle. And therefore the words nitya baddha. Nitya baddha means eternally conditioned. But the word nitya is used, Prabhupada says, because it is such a long time. Not that it is eternal, but we may have the detour is so many millions of lifetimes that it is just like eternal. So we also believe in nitya baddha, in eternal conditioning, but that eternal is not literally eternal. It is very long time. So therefore, in the material existence, we find so many species of life, animals, insects, men, and so on. All are arranged by the superior power. By the superior power. They are not accidental. As for the demoniac, it is clearly said here that they are perpetually put into the wombs of demons, and thus they continue to be envious, the lowest of mankind. So stay away from these things. That is what we are learning from Krishna here. And particularly, there are three gates leading to this hell. Again, this hell is temporary, but this is the hell described in the Bhagavatam. And this is one of the few, really the only place, I think, in the Gita that Krishna talks about hell. He's sort of answering this question. There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So we talk actually a lot about lust and anger, and it's pretty obvious, okay, why lust and anger would lead us down. But greed also. At a certain point, we have to say enough is enough. Now I'm going to spend my time in spiritual things. If we're too greedy, we won't have time for spiritual life. So a devotee gives up greed. So this kama, lust, leads to krodha, anger. It also leads to lobha, which is greed. And anger and greed lead to moha, which is illusion. And illusion, when we're in a state of illusion, when we are actually in a false state of mind, that is, we think we're such a great person, that leads us to mada or pride. When we think I am Dr. So-and-so, I'm, Mr. So-and-so, then we become proud. And that pride then, which is very interesting, leads to envy. So pride leads to envy. We become envious of someone else because we think we deserve it. And we think we deserve it because we are proud. So therefore, the root cause of envy is also pride. I mean, who are we to think that we deserve something, or we should get some respect, or we should be recognized? We think because due to illusion. And this illusion is, therefore these three things, they lead to hellish planets. On the other hand, if we cultivate the mode of goodness, then we will be very close to the Lord. Even if we don't make it, we will still be near the Lord. One has to raise himself at least to the mode of goodness, if not transcendental, before the path to understanding the Supreme Lord can be opened. Without raising oneself to the standard of the mode of goodness, one remains in ignorance and passion, which are the cause of demoniac life. So, the point here is that this is why Krishna again and again describes these qualities. This answers our question now. Because unless we raise ourselves to the mode of goodness, the door to understanding the Lord is not opened. If one is intoxicated, if one's heart is very hard due to eating flesh, if one's mind is disturbed and very agitated, how can one think about the Lord? How can the door to understanding the Lord be opened? Therefore, our base standard, even if we fall down, we should fall down to the mode of goodness. This is why we have to cultivate the mode of goodness, because we will fall at a certain point in our life. But when we fall, we'll fall in the mode of goodness. This is why Prabhupada says marriage is so nice, because even if we fall down, we'll fall down within marriage. But if we're not married, we may fall down in a very, in a very bad way. So in Kali Yuga especially, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he recommends the Grahastha ashram because he knows that people will fall, but they'll still fall in the mode of goodness. Of course, if we don't fall, then it's better to be a renunciate. But if we have a chance to fall, then we should be at least in the mode of goodness. Without coming to the platform of Sattva Gun, nobody can advance in spiritual life, Prabhupada is saying. That is a fact. He says, nobody can advance in spiritual life unless we come to the platform of Sattva Gun. Just like nobody is allowed to enter the law college unless he is a graduate. This restriction is there. What he will understand? Law, he must be a graduate. So similarly, first of all, one has to come to the platform of Sattva Gun. Then spiritual knowledge begins. Very interesting, isn't it? Of course, Lord Chaitanya's mercy can pull us out of any guna. But then once Lord Chaitanya's mercy pulls us out of the guna to make from the lower gunas of rajas and tamas, to make further progress, we must be on the platform of sattva gun. Lord Chaitanya's mercy pulls us out of the quagmire of mature life and it brings us to the temple. And we're living in the temple, in the ashram, serving the Lord. But then if we're there and we're always, angry and shouting and all these things, we won't be able to stay in the temple because of the lower gunas. So in order to further progress, one has to be on the platform of sattva gun. Otherwise, how will one continue one's spiritual life? Can someone read this one, please?
So those godly characteristics are there. Either you practice yourself to come to the godly characteristics, or there is a simple method. If you take to devotional service, all the godly qualities automatically come. This is the process. So in this age, to develop these godly qualities is very difficult. But if you take to Krishna consciousness by the simple method, by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, then automatically you develop all the godly qualities.
Yes. So then Prabhupada comes always back to this point to encourage us and to actually tell us what the real process is. He always comes back to this point that, we have to strive. So it's like a two-train track. We have to strive to develop the qualities, but our efforts will not be successful unless we are chanting. Because factually, it is the chanting that brings these qualities. And we will be successful only if we chant. But because we cannot chant 24 hours a day, the time when we are not chanting, he's telling us, you can also develop these qualities. So it's the same principle as in many aspects of devotional life, that the only principle is you have to chant 24 hours a day. But because we cannot chant 24 hours a day, the time when we're not chanting, we have to do our service and we have to do our activities in a conscientious way. So both things are there. They have to go side by side, like two train tracks. So to summarize, to recap in 1 minute, the hallmark of the demoniac quality and the demoniac attitude is disregarding scriptures and acting whimsically. If you try to encapsulate what Krishna is saying, the demoniac qualities are a result of acting whimsically. The demons, they never want to take spiritual guidance. This is the quality between the demigods and the demons. The devas also have faults, but they are always running to the Lord for guidance. They are willing to take the guidance of the sages. The demons, they act whimsically and they disregard the scriptures. I'll do just what I want to do. Don't tell me anything. Don't say anything because I'm such a great person and I don't need any guidance. So the result is degradation, which is no perfection, no happiness, no supreme destination. They don't reach perfection. They don't gain happiness. So the divine quality, the two things that bring about all the divine qualities is following the scriptures. So living life according to what the scriptures say is good for us. And not acting whimsically, but rather performing one's duty. So even though it is so difficult to do what one needs to do, the devotee performs one's duty in spite of all tribulations. And that is the greatness of a devotee. Prabhupada says this in so many purports. He says that in spite of all obstacles, the devotee will still do one's duty because that duty purifies our existence. And what is the result? The result is elevation. Elevation to the Lord's spiritual abode. So this is the sum and substance, the summary of this chapter. So we'll stop at this point. It's a very good time. And we'll open it up for discussion, realizations, questions. Hare Krishna. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes,
you know, with all the discussions, some people are bound to fall and take the, lower birds, animals and things like that. What is the relief for them, what they how they are going to be out, there seems to be no open chance that they will ever be anything else. So can you can you tell them what they can be ultimately? Can they become human beings, or is there a danger to become human being because they can fall down again and go there? Better stay where they are.
Yes. Actually, your question is a question of an advanced devotee. So you're actually a very advanced devotee, because Maharaj Parikshit asked the same question from Shukadeva Goswami. After he hears the descriptions of the hellish planets,
Yes.
he becomes very concerned about those who fall down. And he tells Maharaj Parikshit, what is the way? What is the way how these people can be alleviated so that they can avoid this? And being a king, he felt it was his duty. This is how he was going to protect the citizens and giving them a pathway out of this. So Maharaj Parikshit, he says that what is their way of deliverance? Because he says that in my experience, atonement doesn't do anything. When they do something simple and they atone for it, they go back and they do the same thing. It's like the Prabhupada said, the people who come to church on Sunday to beg for forgiveness, and on Monday, they go back and they do the same thing.
Right.
So that is our position, and that's your question. And that's the exact same question he asked. And to that Shukadeva Goswami, he confirms this. He says, yes, atonement is useless. What is the right way? The correct way, the thing that actually purifies one's heart, is devotional service to the Lord. Because by that, one's material desires vanish. One's actual, the knots in the heart become vanquished. So the hope for these people is to be engaged in the service of the Lord. The hope for us, not to fall, is not to simply do pious activities and make ourselves very good and pure, but rather to engage in the devotional service of the Lord so that our heart becomes purified. And Prabhupada was saying that chanting the holy names of Krishna. The chanting of the holy names of Krishna is the only hope for these people. It's our only hope and the hope for these people, because it actually changes the heart. It actually solves the problem from the root, just purifies the heart so that those desires go away. So the more we chant and the more we help others chant, we will overcome these.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Very nice question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. My question is like, if you have a extended family member who don't believe in Krishna, and I know that now when I look at all the demonic qualities, I feel a little scared for that person. So how to tell them what is right and how to not correct them, how to tell them which path you should choose, because that person is not ready to listen to anything.
Yes. Actually, this is one of the qualities of the demoniac persons, that they don't, as I was mentioning in the final slides, the very problem is that they don't listen. And if you try to tell them, they become more angry. So trying to correct them is sometimes a mistake, because it actually just makes them more angry and more averse. So we have to use a different route, and that route is just give them Krishna Prasada. So we try to change them by tricking them into Krishna consciousness, softening their heart, and then first of all making them open to us, making them admire us a little bit. Like, okay, this is a nice person. They develop a rapport, and then when they're willing to hear, then we can give them.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I have a question, Prabhuji. Yesterday we were discussing about Vaishnava Aparad, and we were discussing that indirectly or directly we sometimes think some ill thing about the devotees, whatever, directly, sometimes directly also, and sometimes in the temple and all, sometimes indirectly. So Prabhuji, because we are in this material nature, we cannot avoid, I mean, our thinking and whatever is there going in our mind. So
Yes.
Prabhuji, how to avoid, and I know, yeah, we are incurring sins, thinking about Vaishnavas and doing Vaishnava aparadh, but how to control our mind with
Yes.
that, because Krishna gets hurt when we are ill-treating his devotees. So
Yes.
daily we say that vancha kalpatarubhyascha, but still we are not able to follow. They are like desire trees, but still we commit such mistakes.
Yes.
And so, Prabhuji, how to control this mind, and what is the how to how to make the mind mature that no, it's wrong.
No, that's a very nice question. Uh, I struggle with this as well, so I can relate with that question. The mind is like that, right? The mind is always wanting to be critical, and and Prabhupada says that over time the mind becomes trained. So the mind wants to be critical. Over time, it gets trained, and so over time we lose that tendency. We start to not enjoy that tendency. But the main thing is that if our mind is absorbed in better things, then those thoughts will go away. Like again, Raghunath Das Goswami, he kept his mind was so absorbed all the time in the service of the Lord, he didn't have time to think of anything else. So part of the reason we're having these thoughts is because we don't have enough devotional service. If we have those thoughts, we should increase our devotional service so that we don't have time to think about it. And secondly, um, our mind follows our actions. So first what we do, then our mind follows our actions and our words. So if we may have those thoughts and feelings, but if we're engaged in the service of anyone, if we're engaged in the service of the Lord and we keep on serving, ultimately the attachment increases. Just like a mother's attachment to a child. This is very scientific. The mother loves the child more than anyone or anything in this world. The mother loves the child even more than her husband, even more than her parents, even more than anyone, generally speaking. Why is that? Because the mother serves the child the most. Among all the people she serves the children the most. And because she serves the children the most, there's the greatest attachment to the children. Because if we serve anyone, even if that person is a bad person, we will get attached to that person due to the service. The service makes us attached because we invest so much of ourselves in that person, we become attached to that person. In the same way, if we serve the devotees, then even if they're not perfect, and even if we're thinking not nicely, that if we serve the devotees, we will become attached to them because our mind will follow our actions. So Prabhupada, that's why he said to the devotee, he said, one devotee said, Prabhupada, I never feel like offering obeisances because I'm not humble. I don't feel like offering obeisances to the deity or to you or to anyone. I don't feel like it. So Prabhupada says, you offer obeisances and then you will feel like it. Same thing he said about dancing and kirtan. When Prabhupada said, one devotee came to Prabhupada and said, I don't feel like dancing. I don't feel any ecstasy when I dance in kirtan. Srila Prabhupada said, you dance and then you will feel like dancing. So this is why bhakti is such an amazing process. If we just engage in the process of devotional service, Prabhupada says the process of devotional service itself will drag us to the spiritual world. Devotional service itself will make us perfect. Why? Because that service is done for Krishna. That devotional service is done for the devotees of Krishna. And if we keep serving, we will have to become attached to the devotees of Krishna. Just like the mother has to become attached to the children because she serves them all the time. Right? So the key is just to serve them. If we do the positive thing, the negative thoughts will automatically go away.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. these are about directly making Vaishnava aparadhs, but what sometimes we make indirectly, Prabhuji. Then we don't know whom to ask forgiveness and what to do, and it just keeps piles, and it's just keep multiplying and multiplying, and we don't know whom to ask forgiveness and what to do, and we just keep on doing Vaishnava aparadh, and just piles of Vaishnava aparadh. So even Krishna cannot do anything because we have done so much. So, how to get out of that, Prabhuji? I mean, when we indirectly commit, we also don't know that we are committing it, but we indirectly commit, and we don't know
Well,
whom
the
to
nice,
ask forgiveness.
yeah. So regarding that, that is a problem. And the nice thing in this day and age uh, is that Krishna only takes into account aparas that we actually do, what we say and what we do. Krishna does not penalize us in this Kali Yuga because our mind is like this for aparad that we think of. So, a very key point, and this is actually the answer that Prabhupada gives to this question that you're saying, that this is actually the official answer. That yes, therefore, just we have to watch what we do and say. What's in our mind, that Krishna will forgive. Yes.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can I
One
add
second.
something that I heard?
Oh, sure. Yes. If it's on this, yes.
So Sachinandan Maharaj had told that, you write a chit on your mirror saying, Krishna, you are the master, I am the servant. So always, like, at least for me, I remember this point all 10 times at least in the day, Krishna, you are the master, I am the servant. And I have also Manashiksha I do, Krishna, my actions and words should be pleasing to you. So I do that 20 times, because I keep forgetting. So, it's like, if I keep I take positive affirmations, then, and it happened to me. I was like, because after the pandemic, like almost I started going out of the house and I was like, oh, look at my boots and my dress. I'm looking so nice. Then I was like, oh, Krishna, you're the master. Oh, I was like, what am I thinking? So, it helped me. So I'm trying to do those affirmations constantly as much as possible. So then at least I will not go in that direction. My mind still goes, but that he's the master, he's the enjoyer. I have to please him through my actions and words.
Yes.
Thank you,
Very
Prabhuji.
nice point, Masti. Very, very wonderful point. Very nice.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Yes. So actually, I see many hands coming up, but today I want to first give preference, or not preference, opportunity to those who normally don't ask questions. So someone who normally does not ask a question or comment, maybe it's your first time, please go ahead first, and then we will come to the rest of you. Yeah. So don't be shy. We always are, hearing and speaking from same people. So there's 50 people on the call, but only 10 generally ask questions or give comments. Someone would like to go who hasn't asked a question until now in the course, or give a comment? Yes, Giridhar Prabhu.
I have a question. Like, the asura qualities and the Daivika qualities, they are so separate. There is no in between. So we try to, first of all, what I understand is just get up to the platform first, and then just try to hang on to it by doing more good and good. Occasionally, we may just dip down a little bit. Then, like the other Mataji mentioned, that she tries to remind herself through this aphorism as well as thing on the mirror.
Yes.
Actually, last 10 minutes, last 5 minutes, my internet got cut off, so I just jumped in the middle. I don't know whatever happened, but I missed that part. If somebody has some of the nice comments like that, I'd love to hear those things as to. You get onto the platform and you only have to keep doing good and good and good because there's no neutral. You can't stay like that. You have to keep chanting Harinam.
So that's a wonderful point. Prabhupada says there's no neutral ground. Either we are advancing or we are falling. So if we stop advancing, then we will automatically start falling. And that's why we should never stay on a status quo. We should always continue increasing our service to the Lord, so we are moving in the direction of goodness and beyond, transcendence. Now, as far as these two things, uh, so the qualities of goodness are sattva gun. The qualities of the demoniac are passion and ignorance. But rajas and tamas. But these three gunas are always in flux. They're always combining. So it's not in either or. There is a combination of the divine and demonic qualities until we come to the platform of perfect transcendence. Once we transcend the gunas, then we will be only situated in divine qualities. But until then, we are somewhere in the middle. Very few people are all demoniac. Everyone has some good qualities. So it is a combination, but Krishna is describing the two extremes. So we know what they are, and then we are gradually rising on this path of devotional life.
Can I add
Yes,
a
Prabhu.
point?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I'm one of the ones who speaks or doesn't speak often, but
No, this is a comment, so no problem, Prabhu. Yes.
that point that you mentioned about not attracting bad reactions for thinking bad thoughts in the Kali Yuga. And the converse is also true, that simply by thinking good thoughts, we do get the sukriti or the positive reaction for that. So we don't have to actually do good action, though that is a highly encouraged, but Kali Yuga is so, Lord is merciful on the Kali Yuga that we get the good karma simply by thinking as well. So think good things and don't beat yourself up for occasionally having bad thoughts.
Yes. No, that's a very nice point. Very good point that you're saying that if we think good things, then we get the good credit. And if we think bad, then we don't get the bad credit. So it's actually the converse is true, like you're saying. Very good point. Yes. Yes. Very nice. Thank you. Gopal Govinda Prabhu, would you like to go next?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. My question was slightly different regarding this course. I was interested in understanding some of the most often used Sanskrit words, and so that we can understand these verses more practically. So, for example, in 10.10, there's a word Tesham, and then in 14.4 the same word is used in probably in different tense. It uses tasham. So I was like, I just pondered on it, like how this word is changing. So I did not understand it. Maybe if sometime you can pick up some of these most common used words and teach us a little bit if it's possible.
So these words that you have mentioned, these are not important words. They're actually just pronouns. Tesham satata yuktanam. He's just referring to the devotees. They all, satata yuktanam, are engaged in Krishna's bhakti. So these are not very important words. The important words are the words that we do actually cover most of them in the slides, like we did today, where Krishna is making a specific point using a specific word. What were some of the words that we covered today that will remind us? These are here. This one, Sampadam Daivim. So Daivim means divine, Sampadam means qualities. So the divine qualities, Sampadam Asurim, the qualities of the demons. Similarly, we talked about this this one here, Abhijatasya, where Krishna is telling Arjuna, you are born with divine qualities. So these are, and the words that you find, for example, in your homework, they specify certain words. But like Tesham and Tasam, they're just different words and they're not very significant for our study. Of course, one can learn them, and that would be studying Sanskrit, which a person can do through the Bhagavad Gita. But to my knowledge, those are not the keywords that we need to know. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes, but we should focus on the words. It's very important to learn the specific Sanskrit words that Krishna mentions, because they're like hooks in our mind. Oh, Krishna says that word. That's the word of this verse. So, yes. Okay, Kalavati Mataji.
Haribol Prabhu. I wanted to get some clarification. So there are, you raised the point that when we get to the mode of goodness, then the path of understanding the Supreme Lord can be opened. So there are many pious people in this world, particularly if you take the pious people, Indians, they are already following the 4 regulative principles. So you'd assume that they're already in the mode of goodness. But what is it that still stops them from understanding or developing a relationship with the Supreme Lord?
Yes, I'm glad you brought this point up, because I was actually thinking of this myself. The same thing that you're saying, that how sometimes people in the mode of goodness are slower to take up Krishna consciousness. Like you're saying, the pious Hindus, and also the even in the West, the New Age people in the New Age movement who are vegans and all these things, they're sometimes the last to take up to Krishna consciousness. And I don't know why. Every time it's always going back to the same theme, this same story that I referring to. We also find this in the case of Raghunath Das Goswami's pastimes, that his parents would not fully take up the service of Lord Chaitanya, even though they were very, very pious. And the reason why someone in the mode of goodness, or people in the mode of goodness, are sometimes slower in taking up the spiritual life is because one of the qualities of goodness, or one of the things that goodness oftentimes leads to, is pride, where we become proud of our good qualities, right? We become proud of the mode of goodness. Like the parents of Raghunath Das Goswami, they're thinking, I'm already very religious. And Lord Chaitanya says, Prabhupada there also says that how that religion is actually not Vaishnavism. That is not spirituality. When a person performs some charity, does some good work, but does so simply for basically their own sense enjoyment. They're not actually trying to surrender to the Lord. They're not surrendered to the Lord. They're just doing this to actually progress more materially. They actually want to progress more materially, and they're using goodness as a way to progress more materially. So then, if this is the case, which is your question, that goodness leads to pride, which oftentimes slows people down more, why is Prabhupada saying what he's saying, that goodness opens the door? It's because still, once we come to spiritual life, as I say, pride can stop us from coming. But once we are in touch with the devotees and we're in touch with spiritual life, still we need the help of the mode of goodness to progress further. And that's what I was mentioning, how once we come to the temple, you see some people, they struggle a lot, others they do better. Why? Because some people, like, they're very angry, very irritable, or their material desires are very much, so they cannot keep to the principles. They break the 4 regulated principles and they leave. So we cannot, this is just what we're looking at is just starting the process in terms of who gets attracted. But real spiritual life begins, actually at a much later stage. Real spiritual life begins at the time of initiation, actually. That's when spiritual life begins, Prabhupada says. So that point, we have to be at least in the mode of goodness. Once we're initiated, we have to be on the mode of goodness, because how can we follow the regulated principles unless we are on that platform?
Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice point. I'm glad you raised it. Yes. Yes. Champakalata Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, all goes to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you so much for a wonderful class, Prabhu. It cleared so many concepts. I have a question, Prabhu, related to last chapter and this chapter. When we are talking about truthfulness, and today we read about correcting others, it is such a practical topic that because we are conditioned to speak lies when we were karmi, at least. And especially when we are dealing with material people, Prabhu, and especially professional level, or sometime dealing with maybe warranty people or different places. How okay it is for us to manipulate things and speak sometime, because when we speak truth as it is straightforward, things doesn't get accomplished. And also in relation to correcting others, it is very often for us when we see things going wrong around us, especially after getting some knowledge from Bhagavad Gita, whether correcting karmis or even devotees. If you can clarify a little bit on these two parts, Prabhu.
Um, yes, so the devotee does correct, but the devotee corrects to the point where it's not a disturbance to to the person's spiritual life. So there's a verse in the Gita where Krishna says that the devotee of the Lord does not disturb their minds, but rather engages them in the devotional service of Krishna. So if we tell people what they're doing is wrong, then they just, they become more averse to spiritual life. But if you say, oh, you're such a get on the preach, say, you are the most pious person in the world. You're the most religious and exalted person in the world. Therefore, now just chant Hare Krishna. So if we approach people like that, then they will actually chant. So we have to judge the process by the result. And actually, I was having this discussion with a devotee recently that Krishna is a consequentialist. A consequentialist is an ethical position which says that the ethics of something is determined by the result that it produces. So, to some degree, Krishna is also deontologist, meaning that he believes that there are universal principles of ethics that must be followed. But consequentialism, even at points, supersedes deontology. Why? Because Krishna is saying, what is the result this will produce? You have to speak the truth. But if that makes things worse, it's not going to help anyone. So we still have to do the right thing, but how do we do it? By engaging them in Krishna's service, they will gain a new perspective in life, and they will automatically do what we are trying to tell them to do, and they'll do it rather than becoming averse to it.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
So the devotee can be tricky. To answer your question, Prabhupada said, I tricked all of you in Krishna consciousness. He said, I tricked all of you. The devotee can be tricky. The devotee is not dishonest. The devotee is not, the devotee is still very simple and straightforward. But the devotee tricks the non-devotee in Krishna service. The devotee is like Raghunath Das Goswami. He had this quality. He was super, even though he was a complete devotee, he was super expert. When the Muslim tax collector comes and he's ready to put them all in prison, Prabhupada describes that he speaks with the tax collector in such a sweet and palatable way that the tax collector starts to cry out of affection for Raghunath Das Goswami. And all of his uncle, his father, Raghunath Das, they all become free from all bondage. They're just, they become free from, he solves the whole situation. So Prabhupada uses that as an example of how the devotee is expert in all things. Devotee doesn't mean that now we're just serving Krishna and we are, good, not good at something. He's expert in all things, in managing all things. He performs his duties even more nicely than the materialist does, but for the pleasure of the Lord. And not too much, just what is needed to serve the Lord. Yes. Okay, Indu Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad Pranam. Thank you for another wonderful session, Prabhu. My question is regarding in text 21, you were saying that there are three factors, right? The three gates. So lust, greed, and
Anger. Anger.
anger.
That's
Anger. Yes. So how does that relate to false ego? Is my
Okay, how does that uh, relate with false ego? Well, when we are angry, then we, as I showed, that's why I really like this slide, this one here, this one here. So this is how it relates with false ego. Let me show you. Okay, so um, so lust, anger, and greed, what they do is they increase our moha, our illusion. And false ego is illusion. False ego is also pride. So our false ego is in some ways uh, boosted or bolstered up. It gets a boost when we are very angry, lusty, and greedy. Because we're angry only because we're proud. Like if let's say a very powerful person is in front of me, very, very powerful, big man and powerful dictator is in front of me, I won't become angry with them because in front of them, I have to be humble, right? So anger is a sign of pride, and pride is our ahankar, our false ego. The false ego that I am such a great person, I am such and such person, rather than remembering that Jive Swarup Hoy, Krishna Nitya Das, that I am just a servant of Lord Krishna. All these roles and titles that I take are for the service of Lord Krishna and not for my own service. So this is why, yeah, these three things are actually, they increase our false ego to such a big point that it becomes too unmanageable. It becomes too unmanageable. Just like there's a joke one time amongst devotees. They said that uh, we can fit in the car, but our false ego cannot fit in the car. So our false ego becomes so big that that cannot fit in the car, but we can. So yeah, sometimes the false ego is bigger than us.
okay. So do they all stem from false ego also? I mean, like in the Mahatattva, like I'm not just Mahatattva. We have the coverings of the material world, and ego is one of them, right? The false ego.
Yes. So ultimately, all things, as we had shown in that table, they're coming from the false ego, the ahankar, the false self that produces this whole material world. This material world is our false self. But within the false self, there are the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So in that ahankar, the false self, we can increase the mode of goodness. Goodness is also false self. If I think I'm a very good person, very peaceful person, that is false ego. False ego only goes away when we are, going beyond the three modes. We are in the service of the Lord. So in terms of these things, our false ego can be more in the mode of goodness or more in the mode of passion or ignorance, like this. So it's very key to remember that the false ego, we have many options to make our false ego. And if lust, anger, and greed are prominent, that means the modes of passion and ignorance are prominent in our false ego.
Okay. Thank you.
So, yeah, so the false ego is not, lust, anger, and greed are characteristics of a false ego. If we cultivate lust, anger, and greed more, then we will be cultivating passion and ignorance more in our false ego.
Okay. And the only way to get out of it all is to chant Hari Nam and continue to be in the service of devotees.
Yes, exactly. To follow the rules and regulations. So that helps in the process, right? Lust, anger, and greed, they become regulated. So following the rules and regulations, hearing the scriptures, serving the devotees, performing practical devotional service, These are all ways that sort of scrub the heart and the mind of the false ego, and they reveal the real ego. They scrub the false mind and they reveal the real mind. So the material mind is just a covering on the real mind, which is our spiritual mind. Right? So by engaging our mind in the service of the Lord, the real mind becomes prominent. Yes. All these things help.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Kapil Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, it's an extension of Indu Mataji's question, and there are two parts to it. So as we discussed, Krishna mentioned the three gates to hell: lust, greed, and anger. Are there any 3, 2, or 1 gates to Golok Vrindavan among those 26 qualities or otherwise? If you can let us know that. So the second part is the fearlessness. It is an important quality, be it the spiritual endeavor or even in the material lives. And most often it is related with purity and piousness, that it's hard for you to be fearless unless there is purity, not only in your thoughts, but in your actions and intentions. So Prabhu, I just want to hear from you, what are the things that makes us fearful and how to get rid of it? I know the basic understanding around association, chanting, reliance on Krishna, reliance on scriptures, but what else one can do to be fearless?
So very nice questions, very, very wonderful questions. I don't know if I have the answers to them, but I will try. Regarding your first question, so Prabhupada actually answers this for us. Most of us on this call are householders, right? We have families. Just about all of us, I think, on this call are like that. So for the householder, Prabhupada gives the 3 things that lead us to Krishna. And it's different for different people in different stages, as we mentioned, but these were the 3 things that Prabhupada mentioned. And some of you may remember them. So these 3 items, namely charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, are meant for the householder. So for us, this means charity, meaning helping Krishna and his devotees in the propagation of the Krishna consciousness movement. Preaching is a form of charity. Sense control means following the 4 regulative principles. Other things also, but most basically, that's the 4 things. And performance of sacrifice, which Prabhupada says right up here, is chanting of the holy names and other sacrifices also, but most specifically, chanting the holy name of the Lord. So these are the 3 things that are the gates to Krishna. So we could say other things, but I don't want to speculate. I want Prabhupada, what is his decision? So in terms of that list, for those of us in the household life, these are the 3 things. If we do these 3 things, we'll be perfect. Preaching or helping the preaching movement by charity, following the regulative principles, and chanting the holy names of Krishna. Now, for your second question, what causes us fear? What causes us fear, or causes me fear, is when mature life becomes more important and spiritual life becomes less important. Because in mature life, all aspects of mature life are temporary, so therefore they're very fearful, right? Like my job, my work, my family, my body, all these things, mature life is a very fearful situation because you're always losing them. It's always a losing game. And so if my success and my desires are in relation to material things, there's always fear because I'm always going to lose the game. So that's always going to be fearful. And when my focus and my desires are focused upon Krishna and spiritual things, then there's less fear. because those things are not bounded by time. What gives us fear is death and the fear of time, right? Time. So spiritual things are not bounded by time, and therefore they're not fearful. So when we read about and when we associate and read about these devotees in the scriptures who are so renounced, so elevated, then our fear goes away. Because we realize that they were completely dependent upon Krishna and they were most successful. So even if the worst thing happens to me, if I depend upon Krishna, I can be very, very successful. So when we read about these great souls, then we say, okay, Krishna is the protector. And so then our fear, it vanishes. When we are reduced, the material fever, when the material fever is reduced, it reduces the fever of fear. So our insurance policy becomes Krishna. So there's less fear.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It was very nice questions. Thank you. So there's a comment on this question by Madhuri Rasa Ataji. Hare Krishna, excellent point. Material life is a losing game, therefore cause of fear. Yes. That's the problem with material life, that no matter how much we gain, we're always losing, because we're losing the most important thing that we all have, which is time. So like we gain $100,000, right? We make a lot of money all of a sudden. But then we know in our heart that the thing that was most valuable to us was our youth. So we lost that, and we lost the time. And so we're always thinking, maybe I should have been enjoying, or maybe I should have been doing this. And so it's just a losing game. This is the problem. Spiritual life is eternal, so it's always a winning game. You see, that's the opposite. When we do a little bit for Krishna, we always gain. Kruti? Mataji? Kruti Mataji?
Hi Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful class. I have a question from the purport of 5th verse.
Okay.
So in the last line, Prabhupada mentions, anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendently situated. So I was thinking, just performing the regulative principles or following the rules and regulations without the aspect of service to Krishna, how would that transcendently situate us? And how do we understand in context of what Krishna is saying in this verse and what Prabhupada means?
Yes. So good point. And that's why language and terminology is very important. And it's very important that, like you're doing, we carefully read Prabhupada and we see what words is he using when, what language does he use to describe certain things. So Prabhupada says that even the impersonalists are transcendentalists. He says that they are transcendentalists. The reason being because anyone who is dealing with something that is beyond matter is dealing with something that is transcendental. So although the impersonalists are not devotees and they're far from perfection, they're still transcendentalists because they're dealing with spiritual things. So the yogis who follow the regulated principles, they're transcendentalists because they're leaving the life of matter and they're entering the life of spirit. Now their understanding of spirit may be limited, but still they're transcendentalists. So those following the rules and regulations are transcendentalists. At the same time, a further explanation is that unless you engage in Krishna's service, you cannot actually follow the rules and regulations. Eventually, you'll fall down. This is what happens with the impersonalists. Patanti adha, Prabhupada says. They fall down again. Why? Because there's no positive spiritual pleasure, so they come back down to material pleasure. So they're in some ways one and the same. Following the regulated principles is only possible, like Prabhupada was saying, if we chant Hare Krishna. And chanting Hare Krishna will only be possible for an extended period of time if we are following the regulated principles. So someone therefore following the regulated principles must be chanting Hare Krishna. Otherwise, they won't be able to do it. And in that way, they are transcendentalists. But at the same time, even if a person is just dealing with Brahman, they are still called a transcendentalist.
I have another question, but I can wait if you want to take others.
Yes.
So in the purport of 18th verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, he does not know that the present life is a preparation for the next life. Not knowing this, he's actually envious of his own self as well as of others. So I was wondering, how can one be envious of his own self, his or her own self?
Yes, Prabhupada actually says this in a few different places, that one is envious of one's own self. Yeah, it's very inconceivable. It's very inconceivable. But there's a word for it, right? I forget the word. It's masochist or something. There's people who give pain to themselves. They purposely enjoy giving pain to themselves. And you think, well, why would they do that? Why would anyone do something that is not that is giving pain to oneself? Because they think that pain is giving them pleasure. And what's the best example of this that Prabhupada gives? He gives the example of the camel who eats the thorns, and that thorns causes blood in his mouth, and he drinks the blood and he thinks, oh, I'm so happy. So a person who gives pain to themselves is envious of themselves. And in fact, this is the case of not just a few people. This is what material life is about. That we give pain to ourselves, but we think that it is pleasure. And therefore, unknowingly, we are envious of our own self. Because we're giving, a person who's envious of someone gives pain to that person. So because we're giving pain to ourselves, we're envious of ourselves. Like even Confucius, the Chinese philosopher, he said this. He said, life is so simple, but we make it so complicated. And that's material life. It's like there's no shortage of happiness or pleasure or peace in this world, but we're determined to make it difficult. We're determined to make our life miserable because of our unsatiated, unlimited desires. But actually, life is so simple. Even just a ordinary philosopher, I mean, he was a pretty famous philosopher, but a non-devotee philosopher, Confucius, also noted this. He says, what is the problem? Life is so simple, but we make it so difficult.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice questions. Thank you. Sulba Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam, Jai Shila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for a wonderful class as always. I have one question. Who's devotee? Only those who follow the Krishna consciousness? Or they can also be called devotee who is, worshipping Krishna? Because I am from the Gujarati family, and you know that most of the Gujaratis worship the Krishna, but they don't follow the ISKCON. So whenever I talk about, okay, we follow the ISKCON and, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, I say, yeah, we worship Krishna since childhood. We know Krishna is the, Supreme Lord, but they don't want to follow the four regulative principles or, follow this ISKCON's tradition and all. That is the one question. And second question is, how do we know that, if somebody is not following the Krishna or doing anything, or if you convince them to do it, you talk about that, they get angry and they get annoyed. But how do we know that they are progressing, and how long it will take? What are the kind of the factors will turn them into the devotee? How long?
Yes, very nice questions. So for your first question, so you're asking the question, who is a devotee? And you're saying so many people are worshiping Krishna. Is it just through ISKCON? Is it just through? So then we should ask the question, who is worshiping Krishna? And what is worship of Krishna? So just like we were discussing, just giving some puja or charity, is it really worship of Krishna? So devotee is someone who worships Krishna. It's not necessarily just someone in ISKCON. But the question is, outside of ISKCON, where is really the worship going on? Is it more just culture? Is it more just tradition and people are doing some things? And Is there actually the effort to let me lead my life according to the principles of the Gita? Are they following the regulated principles? Are they chanting? Are they following the instructions? If they are, then they are a devotee of Krishna. Then they are a devotee. But if they're not, then it's just saying that I'm a devotee does not make me a devotee. So then they're not a devotee. Then they have something to learn. And as far as Prabhupada is concerned, Prabhupada says that outside of ISKCON, nothing much is going on. There are examples. Even to this day, you can go to Badrinath and there's some very genuine sadhus there who are living there in the middle of winter. And they must have some spiritual potency that they live there year round. They worship the Lord. I mean, they're completely absorbed in the Lord. There's so many temples in India where you find sincere souls doing that. But as far as an organized organization where you can be sure that you'll find, like this is just, you have to really know what you're looking for to find a devotee. But an organization where you can be sure they're really practicing rigidly and thoroughly, that is ISKCON. And that's the gift that you get through this movement. And as far as time goes, time is as long as we make it take. Like Aindra Prabhu, he had a famous sentence. He said, the process of spiritual life is gradual, he said, and we can make it as gradual as we like. So the point is that we can make it as fast as we like, but we can also make it as gradual as we like. So that's the nice thing also about ISKCON, is that it really pushes us to go fast because the association pushes us. This is the process, do this, follow it vigilantly, and go back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada says, in this life. Otherwise, who knows what the path is? We're on very dangerous ground, unknown ground.
Wonderful, Prabhuji. Thank you. So what is in my hand is, as you explained, just feed the prasadam and pray to Krishna that, they will soon follow the path of Krishna. So that's all I can do, or anything else I should do? I'm praying to Krishna every day, whoever is not, following my family, immediate family, extended family, so many people. So anything else? And, we are trying to conduct the sessions and, trying to explain them. We do that. But what else I can do?
So Lord Chaitanya, he says, Yaro dekhe tara kaha Krishna upadesh, aman agya hoy guru udesh. So Lord Chaitanya says that whatever opportunity we find, wherever we find it, we should tell others about Krishna, which means that we should tell others about this process, give them a book, talk to them in a way that they will reciprocate. So that is the preacher. The preacher has to use his intelligence on how to do it. But that is the instruction. So the instruction is we share Krishna. Now, how we do it, that we have to use our own intelligence according to every circumstance. So Prabhupada says there's two types of intelligence. There's Vaidika intelligence and there's Lokika intelligence. Vaidika intelligence is the intelligence we get from the scriptures. That is our basis. But then we have to use Lokika intelligence, which is, as in English we say, street smart, right? Street smart. We have to use Lokika intelligence, means we use our own intelligence on how to apply the Vaidika instruction. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Sham Rupini Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. I had a question like Brahmavadi and Mayavadi are two different people, right? They are not the same. Yes. So Mayavadi, they have a fall down. So what about Brahmavadi? Even they have a fall down?
So Brahmavadis are devotees of Krishna who don't deny that Krishna has a form, but their realization is only up to the impersonal form. And Mayavadis, they deny that Krishna has a form. So the Brahmavadis are progressing. They're on the path up. They're very good. Even the four Kumaras are sometimes described as Brahmavadis. You can even go to Vaikuntha if you're a Brahmavadi. You're so pure because there's no offense there. Their realization is up to Krishna's effulgence. It hasn't actually come to Krishna's form. And the moment that they see the form of the Lord, or they access the form of the Lord, they become Vaishnavas. But the Mayavadis, they deny the existence of the form of the Lord and they say that I am God. It's all one. That I am God, you are God, we are all God. So it's a completely different mindset. Mayavadi is saying, I am God. Brahmavadi is saying, no, you are God, but I just know your effulgence. So therefore, the four Kumaras, as soon as they smelt the tulsi of the leaf from the feet of the Lord, they became Vaishnavas. They moved from Brahmavadis to Vaishnavas. So Brahmavadis are very pious. They are devotees of the Lord.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yes, very nice question. And it's a very clear distinction there. So there's two separate types of devotees. Thank you, Mataji. You have great taste for hearing. You're very always a very nice listener, always attending very intently.
No, thank you for the wonderful sessions.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Param Karuna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
In one of the previous answers, you mentioned about this statement that spiritual life actually begins upon taking initiation. So I have also heard that many times before, and my question is, if you can elaborate a little bit on how to inspire people to take the next step of initiation from the point where they are very attracted to Lord Krishna's message in Bhagavad Gita. They have begun chanting, they have begun following regulative principles. So they are doing those things. And but is initiation necessary? Is the question that some ask. Some kind of take the next step and just move forward, just like in the same momentum, but some kind of get stuck. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada has written both ways actually. At one place he has talked about the strong need for initiation, whereas at another place he has mentioned that there's no need for initiation, just the chanting of the holy name is enough. And of course there are deeper meanings to that which I don't understand very well. So there's definitely consistency. I'm not saying there is contradiction, but if you can share a little bit and clarify on what can we do or say to those people who are making very nice progress, but somewhere or the other they feel that for some reason, maybe somebody feels this is the catch, all this has been building up to this, or maybe it is something else that I'm not ready for this, or is it necessary, or various kind of blocks are there.
Yes.
What can we say, and how do we clarify the statement that spiritual life actually begins? So their spiritual has not begun, or how to kind of qualify that and explain that?
Yes. So this is a very wonderful point that you bring up. And it's true what you're saying, that Prabhupada mentions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, what I recall, Prabhu, and you can correct me, exactly what he says that in this day and age, the chanting of the holy name is so strong that even if a person is initiated through the chanting, one can go back home, back to Godhead. Something along those lines. That's how he phrases it. He says that even if one is not initiated, by the process of chanting, one can go back home, back to Godhead. That's how powerful chanting is. Specifically, he says in this day and age. This is because this is the Yuga Dharma. Now, Rupa Goswami, in the Nectar of Devotion, he mentions the 5 most important items, the most potent items of devotional service, which are Nam Dham, Bhagavatam, and the deity and the devotee. These 5 things. And then he mentions the 3 most important parts of devotional service. And those 3 most important, all 3 have to do with the spiritual master, approaching a spiritual master, taking initiation, all these things. So not just Srila Prabhupada, but even Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, which is kind of like the solid guidebook of devotional service, he says that the most important item is surrendering to the spiritual master, and the most potent items of the process is of bhakti. So Prabhupada's mood in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is more one of that, the holy name is so powerful that that, I mean, there's no limitation to it that we can assign. And so to say that, well, you need initiation and the holy name is not sufficient enough to take you back to Godhead is putting a limitation on the holy name, and that's incorrect. But practically speaking, because we are not Haridas Thakur, because we cannot chant continuously unless we don't take shelter of a spiritual master, it is virtually impossible to go back home, back to Godhead. Because except for that one statement of Prabhupada, you don't find it anywhere. Everywhere, Prabhupada and the Acharyas, they all say that the most potent form, most important item of devotional service is taking shelter of the spiritual master. Now, the question is, and this is what we can, tell people, is that what does it mean to take shelter of the spiritual master? Initiation is not a meaningless formality, but it is a formality. And Prabhupada says initiation actually occurs when one accepts the spiritual master in one's heart. That is the point of initiation, when the spiritual master and the disciple accept one another. When the actual yajna happens, or the name change happens, that is different. So it is that connection with the pure devotee of the Lord that is really our saving grace, that connection. So if we explain it to people that, look, this is your connection with the pure devotee of the Lord, which is so important. Like Raghunath Das Goswami, again, going back to his example, he wanted to see Lord Chaitanya. He wanted to join Lord Chaitanya. And he tried so many times, but every single time he was not successful. Either his parents would catch him and they would bring him back, or he met Lord Chaitanya and Lord Chaitanya would send him back. He said, no, you cannot join me. You have to go back. And the only point when he got successful is when he runs away from home one time and he goes to Nityananda Prabhu. And Nityananda Prabhu, he represents the spiritual master. He goes to Lord Nityananda and there he takes shelter of him and he pleases Lord Nityananda. And then when Lord Nityananda is pleased, then Lord Nityananda tells him, he says, now you will very soon attain the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And soon after that, he gets the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Showing to us that when we please the devotee of the Lord, then that is when we get the mercy of the Lord. There's just no second way around it. That's why pleasing the devotees of the Lord is the life and soul of the devotees. It's not something we do on the side. It's the main thing. So Krishna says in the Gita, where I forget where that verse is from, but he says that at the time of initiation, I accept the devotee as good as myself. This is the exact words Krishna uses. He says, at the time of initiation, I accept the devotee as good as myself. And why does he say that? He says that because at that point, we've pleased the devotee of the Lord. And the devotee has accepted us. Due to our sincerity, the devotee has accepted us. And therefore now the Lord has agreed to accept us. So this is a very common principle throughout India. If we're preaching to Indians, as I think some of people are that you're thinking of, is like Hanumanji, right? Everyone in India is worshipping Hanumanji. Why not Lord Ram? He is just a monkey and he's a servant of Lord Ram. They're worshipping Hanumanji because Hanuman is the pathway to Lord Ram and to Krishna and to all these things. So we become as good as we become. Krishna accepts us as his own when we take shelter of the Guru. But the main way, my personal experience in which we inspire people to take this step is when they are inspired by us. So when they become inspired by their preacher, then whatever the preacher says, they're ready to do. And then they become inspired to take shelter from the Guru. They actually don't have much of a connection with the Guru. Their connection is through the person who makes them into a devotee. And then that connection then makes that connection with the Guru, like initially. And then the connection with the Guru really flowers. But intellectually, they don't get convinced. It's like when the relationship is close, then they're just, okay, what should I do? I have faith in you, so you tell me what I should do. And that's why the process of taking a Guru is a process of also connecting. You could say it is related with the person who preaches to us, because that person, it's a trust that we develop in that person that allows us to take us that step.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Many wonderful points here.
Thank you. Would you like to add something to that, Prabhu?
No, I think I'll contemplate on these points. I'll listen. Yeah, very wonderful points.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Last question from Chandana Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. This is in relation to one of the answers that you gave previously, but is there a difference between impersonalists and Mayavadis, or are they similar, the same thing, or like the same term but in different languages? Like, can you give a little bit more detail about that?
Yes, so the English word impersonalist is a more broader term than the Sanskrit term Mayavadi. So when we say impersonalist, we have to say, well, which impersonalist are you? So an impersonalist can also be someone who is a Brahmavadi, meaning someone who worships the impersonal aspect of God, but does not deny that God has a form and does not say that they are God. So that impersonalist just worships the impersonal aspect of God. That's their realization. A Mayavadi is also an impersonalist, but that impersonalist is someone who says that God does not have a form and we are God and everything is one, and God's form is actually Maya. So therefore they are impersonalists, but the wrong type. How does that answer your question? What does that clarify?
Yes, that does. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think Chandana is our youngest Bhakti Shastri participant right now. She's very enthusiastic. Thank you. All right, so it's 12 o'clock, my time, 1 o'clock, I think your time. This is the time when we stop. Thank you very much for wonderful discussion and inspiration. And next time we will read chapter 17. So only 2 more chapters to go. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Babu. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji. Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare
Prabhuji,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Danvat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanvat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.